For those of us who've worn a badge, the job asks something few people will ever understand. Every day, we confront the darkest corners of humanity: violence, tragedy, cruelty, and over a career, it forces a choice. We can let those experiences hollow us out, drive us toward the addictions and escapes that swallow so many, or we can fight to rise above it, to find healthier ways to carry the weight. But make no mistake, no one sees what we see and walks away unchanged. 20 or 30 years in this profession reshapes you. The person who first pinned on that badge isn't the same person who takes it off for the last time. Along the way, we sharpen our skills, we build our capabilities, and we learn to survive. Yet beneath all that, the toll keeps stacking up. The tragedies, the inhumanity, the worst of what people can do to one another. So when the career ends, we're left with the most important questions of all. And that would be, who am I now? And where do I go from here? Do we work through the thick fog of trauma, or do we fall into despair? Do we let being a cop define us forever, or do we recognize it as just something that we did, not something that we are? Finding purpose after retirement is difficult, and too many people never find it. And far too many people die without ever discovering what life could have been beyond our service in law enforcement. My guest today has walked that path. Robert Brandt, a 29-year veteran of the Tucson Police Department, what I like to call the modern day Wild West. We talk about his beginnings on patrol, his years on SWAT, and the journey that led him to find purpose after he retired. And that is helping his fellow law enforcement and military brothers and sisters. Along the way, Rob found himself working with the Boulder Crest Foundation Struggle Well program. And that's his new passion, which is to help his peers confront and grow through their post traumatic experiences in what they call post traumatic growth. I'm your host, Jay Hinsey, and this is Under the Crap. Well, let's get into this. My guest today, Rob Brandt, and he grew up in Tucson, Arizona, attended college before being hired by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. In 1995, Rob joined the Tucson Police Department, where he served as a member for 29 years. His career with the department was both diverse and exciting, working in a variety of assignments and serving the Tucson community. In July of 2022, Rob was asked to assist in developing the department's first wellness unit. In this assignment, Rob's mission was the well-being of all department members and retirees. He managed several programs designed to improve the health and wellness of department members, all centered around the Boulder Crest Foundation Struggle Well program. After retiring from the Tucson Police Department, Rob joined the Boulder Crest family and serves as a regional director for the foundation's Struggle Well program. In this position, Rob focuses on maintaining existing partnerships and developing new ones with public safety agencies to the Struggle Well program to our nation's first responders. Rob lives in Tucson, where he loves spending time with his wife, 3 children, and 2 grandchildren. Rob, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Jay. It's
You
cool to
look
be.
good, man. Yeah.
Thanks. You do too. I tell
You
you.
look the same.
I don't feel the same. But yeah, no, it's I just right back at you. I think we've probably aged well, especially
Yeah.
considering the career paths that we've had. But,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I do have a lot of aches and pains in the morning. I will tell you that.
Yeah. It just seems to get worse some days. Just getting out of bed, you can hurt yourself, but I think that just comes with it. Most viewers on here don't know, but I was on the Tucson Police Department, and Rob and I were in the same academy class together. Do you remember any of that?
I remember all of it. I mean, 95.3, brother.
Was it the Dirty 13?
I have, we only had like 13 or 14 that
something like that.
graduated. So it was a good time. It was cool memories when you look back at it. I mean, it was just in some ways, it seems like a lifetime ago, and
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like it was just yesterday.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. It was probably the best experience. I was there 8 years and had other opportunities to go other places, but that really shaped me. I always told everybody, going to the FBI, hey, I'm a beat cop at heart. So that's the way I'm going to that's the way I look at the lens in my life. And it served me well for sure. Do you remember any good stories when we were
I don't know if there are any.
Tom McNally was our
He was.
sergeant, right?
And for your listeners, if you had to find the poster boy for what a drill sergeant should look like, I think Tom was it. From his
Yeah,
aviators to his cleft chin to
that's right.
just the way
He
he
was tall.
carry himself, tall. He was an amazing guy and a good guy. I got to know him a lot more after the academy, and he really was a good dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
good times. Yeah, it shows you at the time the Tucson Police Academy was really small and in a horrible location. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
close to the sewage plant for the city, and
That's
and it
right.
stunk all the time. There wasn't a lot to do except for run in the Santa Cruz Wash, so we ran the
Yep.
Santa Cruz Wash all the
Yep.
time. Yeah,
Yep.
but it was a good time.
Try to avoid being yelled at, and I appreciate that it was one of those type of academies. I don't know what they call those nowadays, but it seemed like it was definitely a hard academy, and it served me well. What about you?
Well, absolutely. It was after pretty much the first day, I had pretty much I'm all in, and this is going to be a cool ride. The class I thought came together pretty quick
Yeah.
overall. I finished, or at several points in my career, I was assigned to our academy as both a basic training officer and a sergeant over stuff. And now the academy is like 35 weeks long. I think combined our
Wow.
academy and field training and everything wasn't even 35 weeks long. So
Wow. That's a
they're
lot.
spending a lot of time training police officers. There's a lot more to train them in too. I mean,
Right.
it was somewhat of a simpler job to do when we started for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Policing in 1995 was way different than I think it is now, for sure.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, I thought it was. I was very honored to go there just to get on to pass everything. I think there was several thousand that applied for the job, but just to actually get hired, that was the best part of my life. I was a young man and I was fairly newly married, and it just very good memories the whole time.
Oh yeah, I agreed. Yeah, it was very cool. In fact, our last Gary Parrish, I don't know if you remember Gary, but he was
Yeah,
the
hmm
last one of our class that he just retired the middle of last year. He was the last one.
he
So
was the
there's
last one.
no longer anybody from our class as an active member of the Tucson Police Department.
Wow, I was going to ask you that. Who was the last one? Gary Parrish. Okay.
Gary
Wow,
Parrish.
I haven't seen him in years. Well, good for him.
Yeah, yeah, he's in the Army still. He's a Army reservist. So God bless
He
him.
was a stud back then. I'm sure he still
He
was.
is. Yeah, he
Yeah,
sure is. Yeah,
one of those tree-like men. So
from
strong.
Alabama.
Yeah, from
From
Alabama. That's right.
from Alabama.
We
Yeah,
had a lot of good characters in our class
not
for sure.
maybe not the smartest, but definitely the hardest. So, that's,
Now, did he become a detective, or did he do other things? Or
he'd be promoted to sergeant. I think he worked some undercover roles for a while, and as a sergeant, he oversaw detectives. He worked with a lot of he oversaw a sex offender unit for a long time,
okay,
and yeah, but he did promote. And I think most of our class did pretty good. I know you went on to bigger and better things with the FBI. We had two captains out of our class, a lot of lieutenants. I think just about everybody became at least a sergeant, and so our class did well. They represented pretty good.
that's great. That's great. I'd love to see everybody again. It'd be interesting
It
to
would
just
be
see
cool. Yeah, it
see.
would be cool.
So for you spent 29 years. It's a long time to be in uniform to work as a police officer. Let's talk about that. Let's break that down a little bit. So you went to the street. What team did you go to? Did you go out east or?
Went out east to Operations Division East, Team 4, and it was kind of cool that I grew up and I lived in that area. And I don't know how you felt, but it was kind of like every day was, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah.
Field training didn't seem that hard. It was something that just kind of came natural. And the job is the kind of job I always found that especially if you like played team sports or like that camaraderie, it was perfect for that. It really didn't feel like work very often. And granted, there's a lot of if you watch Cops and you thought that's what policing is all about, when you get in there, you find there's a tremendous amount of administrative, work that goes behind all of that.
Yeah.
But even still, those moments when you get to chase a bad guy, kicking a door, all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
just is like, this is why I do this job. But you mentioned you're a beat cop at heart, and we all, as we get older, I think honestly, the patrolling and being out in the field is a young person's
Yeah.
job. You can only maintain that ability for so long, and as you go into other assignments where you're not doing that every day, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
If no matter where you go in life, putting on that uniform and answering calls for service, dealing with bad guys right in their face, that's the beauty of the job. That's why we all want to do it. So,
Yeah, I agree. It was those times I remember putting on the uniform and going out, getting in the car by myself and going and taking care of business on behalf of the community was like that was the best part of that job.
oh yeah,
And getting to police, actually getting to go find things and get involved in things and not call to call to call to call and you don't get to do anything. You just it doesn't seem like you could have time to do anything policing wise. You're just always stuck doing the same thing. And did you find
yeah.
that happened over the years for you?
I think it did for sure, especially when I went back as a sergeant and started as a patrol sergeant. Things had shifted. I had been in the academy for quite a while before I came back out, and we had less people, more calls, and it just never seemed like we were getting caught up. It was still a lot of fun, and I still enjoyed it very much. In fact, being a patrol sergeant was probably the best job I had on the department. Especially, I worked a later shift after the business hours. You're kind of like chief of police.
Yeah.
We're making a lot of decisions on how we're going to do things. But that being said, it was always like, can you copy this call? Can you call this complainant or this victim? It just the amount, and I think the evolution of certain things happened. Just dates us, but you and I were both started as police officers before cell phones were really a thing.
Yeah.
People
That's
used to have to
weird.
go to payphones, and that affected the call load at least. Because if people had to actually go search out a phone to call us, they lost motivation to do that
Yeah.
along the way.
Right. Right.
Where now they just can see something, pull their phone out and call. So the calls increased exponentially because of technology for sure. We have created kind of a victim society or culture where
Yeah.
people are used to calling somebody for help when they should be able to figure some of the stuff out themselves. So there's been a little bit of a culture shift there. And uh, it just kind of does, like you said, the circle effect of that is that you're not able to actually be proactive, go look for high crime areas and do that proactive enforcement to reduce that. It just keeps feeding the cycle, and you're playing catch up all the time.
Yeah, I had a mentor that people in the area that he worked, all the bad guys knew him. A lot of people knew him. A lot of good people that were around law enforcement knew who he was. It was one of those things where if he heard something on the radio, who he knew who that person was, and he dealt with them before, and he could go deal with it. And I think we lost that over time. I would imagine by just not being in the community anymore, being stuck
Right.
out on all these other things. And did you find that happened to you while you were in patrol?
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of a beat cop is like you're owning that piece of property, that geography, and you're doing that. You're the personal servant in a sense for those people that live in that community. I always really relish the idea that the people in my beat can sleep safe at night because I'm out here, not because I truly want to make sure they feel that way.
Yeah.
Um, we when you really look at the whole purpose law enforcement exists in this country, it comes down to one thing, and that's to ensure that people that live in this country can exercise the rights guaranteed to them by the Constitution. And the only way they can do that is with the proper law enforcement out there. And we live in a country essentially where you can do whatever you want to pursue your happiness. And the caveat to that is as long as you're not infringing upon somebody else's rights while you do that. And that's where laws come in. So as police officers, that's why we take an oath. We uphold the Constitution. It's our only job is to ensure that people's rights are not infringed upon. And that's how I looked at it is, even the people we arrested, we couldn't infringe upon their rights. They still had those rights guaranteed to them. So we had to, I took that to heart that,
Yeah.
this is a job that people can go about, do their things. And I always when I would tell the recruits, I'm like, we're not doing it for the people that are always patting us on the back saying, thanks for your service. We really are doing it for those fat, dumb, lazy people sitting in a basement playing video games that don't even know we exist. And they can do that because we're out here doing our job.
Yeah.
And that's the whole beauty of the way this country's set up.
Yeah. No, I took a position that I wouldn't want someone to violate my rights. So I took that very seriously in how I treated everybody, even bad guys or the accused. And if I was accused of something, I would want to be treated like the golden rule says. And so I took that to heart as well, and I did that throughout my entire career with FBI too. It means something, and you're right.
Mhm.
That oath means something, and it meant something to me. So you got out, you got through field training. Where did you work patrol for a number
Good,
of years?
yeah. I did patrol for a couple years in Team 4, went out to the academy as a counselor, and while I was there, I processed for LPO, which is police officer position, kinda like a corporal. Some agencies had a corporal. And at the time, if you made the list, you went anywhere in the city where there was an opening. So once I was done as a counselor at the academy, there was an opening in Team 1, so I ended up going to Team 1 as, an LPO, and never had the opportunity to work down in Team 1. That's for those that don't know, Tucson, that's our more socioeconomically deprived area town. A lot of fun. Had a lot of fun, really tight camaraderie and unity amongst the officers that worked there. And it was neat. Actually, some people didn't quite get this, but I got more respect as a police officer from that community than I did on the east side, where we have more of the affluent members of society.
Oh yeah, talk
And I
about
think
that.
it's a mutual respect.
Yeah,
It's people that just understand that, hey, you have a job to do. They're much more understanding of what's real in life. They're not expecting life to be what you see on social media today. They knew that there was hardships in life, so they respected that.
yeah.
And if even the people we arrested, they kind of understood that, hey, I was trying to get away with something, and you caught me. You got your job to do. My job's to try to get away from you. You caught me. Okay, and that was, they treat you with that kind of. It wasn't like, hey, we love you, anything, but it was kind of a mutual understanding type of respect that we
I'd
had from
I'd
that
take that all
community.
day long over some of the other
Absolutely.
nonsense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I enjoyed it. And then I went to, the Bravo unit down there. It was really a good time.
Okay. Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
We did a ton of narcotics operations, in fact.
So was the Bravo unit, was that undercover kind of way, you plain clothes work?
Yeah, the idea is called the community response team, and they would respond to issues that affected the community at a not quite sending them off to another unit. We were essentially patrol officers assigned to a plainclothes unit within the division and would work problems. And again, on in Team 1, one of the biggest problems was narcotics. So we would do a lot of narcotics operations. It got to the point where I think we got in trouble because we were doing more search warrants for narcotics than the narcotics unit for the department. Uh, it,
Of course.
but it was kind of a target rich environment, so it
Yeah.
wasn't too difficult to do, and had a lot of fun doing that. While I was in that assignment, I tested for SWAT, and I was fortunate enough to make it. I think that was about 2000. And my God love him, my Bravo sergeant at the time said, "Hey, congratulations on making SWAT. You're gonna have to find another job because it ain't gonna work out with Bravo." So um, I like Bravo, but I saw the writing on the wall. I tested for bikes, and I was fortunate enough to stay in Team 1 as a bike cop. And when I say bikes, not motorcycles, these
Right.
were mountain bikes.
Yeah.
And it was hands down probably the funnest assignment that I had on the department because I was still young enough. And it's like you're just a big kid on a bike going after, policing the city. And we wore a different uniform, obviously. It was shorts and a polo shirt that
Yeah.
said police. And we were marked. We had patches and everything, but people never thought we were cops. So we would stumble into stuff all the time.
Yeah. And you're quiet too, coming up on things, right?
Quiet. And it's just people, again, even when we'd stop, I'm like, you're cops. I'm like, yeah, we're cops. You're under arrest. But it was
Easy.
you. And in those assignments, you learn to be adapt. Because I
Yeah.
remember I stopped two guys, both with narcotics. One took off running, so I handcuffed one to my bike and ran after the other guy. And it was bad. My bike. I put him between the spokes, so if he tried to run with my bike, it would just get in the way.
All right. I was going to ask you, like, how did you do that without him getting on your bike?
Yeah, so it was. He wasn't going to pedal anywhere, and this guy wasn't in the best of shape. There was a reason he didn't run. So, but yeah, it's fun stuff like that. Like you just have to do policing a little bit different. But the positive side of bikes is you can definitely be a lot closer to the community. Talk to people. You're much more accessible. I think people are comfortable coming up to you on a bike than seeing you in a
Yeah.
police car and everything. So we really seemed to get a lot of good response from the community, and it was a fun job. It really was.
Did you, with the time as the federal prison, did you learn a lot from that? Did that help you in a lot of ways with getting into police work?
It did, and it was kind of funny because I was young. I didn't know a lot of these players. I worked at the Federal Correction Institute there in Phoenix. Like Sonny Barger was
Yeah.
my orderly, the guy that was the head of the Hells Angels.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
he'd come in and empty my trash every day, and we'd have
Oh,
conversations, and I knew a lot of people, like, all the other inmates kinda showed him respect, but I'm like, "Who's this old guy?" But they would you would understand being around criminals, they're always trying to get one over on you, and it's
yeah.
the criminals that are polished aren't doing it in an aggressive fashion. They're doing it on the sly, on the down low, they're trying to be your friend, they're trying to manipulate
Manipulative.
you. Very much so. So it was good to be in that environment because it definitely saw that, I think TV and my life up to that point gave me the impression that bad guys walk around with, black clothes and a mask and I'm a bad guy. And that's not the case. These people are you and me, and they just are trying to take advantage of a situation, and
Yeah.
they'll act like they're your friend and stab you in the back at the same time. So it was a good learn, especially going into law enforcement, becoming a police officer. It was a great time and experience.
Yeah, I didn't have the same. I thought I was gonna be in the ministry as a pastor, and I ended up joining the police department, and boy, was I naive to the world and sheltered, and I had some great mentors that helped me, wise up to the streets and toughen me up a little bit, and it was the best thing for me. And I had been in the military, but, I hadn't experienced the things that we do in law enforcement
Right.
in the uniform. Changed my life for sure.
That's interesting you say that because when I was back at the academy, especially as a supervisor, one of the officers that was one of my basic training officers, we kept seeing a lot of that coming in. Not comparing you to what these young people are, but they're coming either right out of college or this is like their first real job. They still live at home with their parents. And going back to the basic training officer who worked for me, he termed them all home because they're all homeschooled virgins, and that's kind of they really try. Jay, they weren't even comfortable just having a conversation with people. We
Yeah,
started adding a class early on in the academy. Just we bring out role players, people, not
yeah,
police officers. They just citizens, and say, hey, let them have a conversation with you.
yeah,
And you could see it was awkward for these recruits that they're just not. Everybody's an electronic communicator now. They don't know how to have a conversation with people.
yeah,
And so it's pretty cool to do that because it's not natural. So
yeah.
what you had on steroids is what's kind of we're experiencing with a lot of people coming in the profession.
Yeah, it was tough. I thought about quitting several times, and then I had some good, like I said, mentors that like, this is for you. You just need to get past this thought in your brain. Because I grew up the same way. I literally thought I was going in the ministry, and it ended up being my ministry was in law enforcement. I just didn't know it, and it was in
Yeah.
uniform, and it was at helping other people. It was going after bad guys. It was dealing with those people who wanted to hurt others. And for me, it was the best thing I ever did. I'm glad I never quit. I'm glad I moved
Well,
forward.
that's good. That's good. I don't know if I can name drop. Am I allowed to name drop on your podcast?
You can come up with another name.
Okay, well, there was a guy who we both worked for at some point. He went on to be the chief of police in a suburb city of Tucson, and he told me one day, he's like, it's they call us peace officers for a reason. Is we're bringing peace to situations, and sometimes that requires us to physically detain somebody
Yeah.
or have to use enough force to stop somebody from hurting or killing somebody else, but we're doing it from a position of trying to bring peace to a situation. And then
Yes.
to your point is you ministered through the profession. Absolutely. It's again, going back to you're trying to preserve the rights of people. And to
Yes.
do that sometimes, bringing peace to the situation may require you to use some violence or some tactics that may not seem peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. And that's why we get trained. I mean, it's a
It's
dangerous job. I mean,
reality.
looking at the statistics just from 2025, it's getting more dangerous. So yeah, we have to be prepared to do those things. And I don't think they didn't violate my morals or my
Mm-mm.
faith because I was protecting others and I was adhering to the law, and it made me even stronger. So from Bravo unit, you got onto SWAT. Did you go over there full time or was that a side gig? Were you a sergeant?
Yeah. So
Okay.
please, and you were still on the team when I
Yeah.
came on
That's
in
2000, you said?
2000. I came
Okay.
on. So I don't remember exactly when you left, but you were there for a couple years.
Yeah, 2003 I left. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, from that point, I was collateral assignment, call out that kind of thing. But I had a primary assignment for the police side of things. And when I got promoted to sergeant, they created two squads of full-time SWAT guys. Primarily, that was when the department was going through some financial hardships and strains, so they were looking to reduce overtime. So they wanted to have SWAT guys on in the evening, the high call out time periods that could respond to things and try to mitigate them without having to pull out a whole team. So, and I got to be one of the sergeants to run one of those squads. And that was another really cool assignment because we were citywide. Really, our responsibility was to anything that looked like this could potentially become a SWAT situation, get there and try to mitigate it before it had to get to the point where we needed to pull a lot of resources out on the overtime and everything like that. So
Yeah.
that was
Well,
fun. We had a good time.
yeah. What was that like being a sergeant in that group? Was it a strain on you? Was it, did the guys, you know, doing that full time? Or were you doing patrol, but then that other piece would happen?
We would do we were basically like a force multiplier for patrol. If we didn't have anything requiring us to respond in a SWAT capacity, then we would go to the divisions that were getting kind of hammered with calls and try to help with we can with the call load as much as possible. And it was fun because I had a good squad of mature. It was kind of a mix. I had senior operators to some solid operators to some new operators on the squad, and so it was a good experience for them. And they also were able to kind of train patrol officers and people that they interacted with in the field because before it was more if you had a SWAT guy in your squad, you got a little bit, but now we were affecting people all the time. And we made some good tactical advances during that time frame because we started working with canine officers a lot.
No.
So since we were working the same hours, we developed tactics and usage. And now I believe canines almost is a full-time position on the team, the use of canines for tactical operations. But it was fun. We got to go to all the hot calls. That was
Right.
and they didn't really have anybody that we worked for that was on duty. And I'm not trying to make it sound like we were, unsupervised, but it was the first time I realized that even people that had higher rank weren't that tactically comfortable. So we
No.
would get called a lot to manage things that they knew if they called us, I don't have to worry about this situation.
Yeah.
So I felt good about that we could offer the department and then people that maybe weren't too comfortable in making certain kind of decisions on calls could be a good resource for them.
Yeah.
And it worked out. We saved the department money. I don't know if you remember, but our mission on SWAT was always to save lives. And sometimes getting there quicker and just utilizing a quick tactic that could prevent things from escalating, I think we fulfill that mission often.
Yeah.
So,
Anything profound during that time that affected you during that SWAT time?
well, like everything else, I'd love to say everything I went on was successful, but that's not the case. And we had several missions that went sideways, didn't go according to plan. And it's those that I really reflect on and learn from. There was one in particular. We had a barricaded subject, somebody that had, I guess, wasn't paying his taxes, and somebody from either the Department of Revenue or the county went out there to address that with him. And he basically pointed a gun at him, said, "Get off my property." They call us out. Something that today we would probably just not even respond to other than making sure everything was safe and tell the guy, "Hey, at some point you're going to have to talk to us. Here's our number." But at that point, it was the tactics were different at that time, full call out, and it was dragging on. We had a good tactical plan that I was actually the team leader on and I put together. But when it came to the point where we had to put it in motion, somebody didn't follow what they were told to do on the team. And we ended up shooting one of our own people.
Mm.
And it was not sure if you heard about. I'm sure you might have heard about this incident, but essentially what happened is once everything was settled, we were securing everything. One of the medics came up to me and pointed to one of our members, and he had a entry wound on his helmet right above his right ear and an exit wound right above his left ear.
Oof.
And I'm looking at him going, "There's no way that bullet did not go through your head." So I told him, "Hey, you've been shot. I need you to sit down." He was looking at me like, "I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about." I'm thinking he's in shock. So I'm like, "I think you're just in shock. Sit down." And our medic was actually looking at him like, "I don't really want to take this helmet off because I think it's the only thing keeping his head together." But he felt around, didn't see any blood. Again, the member was acting completely normal and cognizant. When we took the helmet off, finally, what we saw was as it entered the helmet, and this was a 5.56 round, it wasn't a handgun round.
Mm.
It had gone into the Kevlar and then did a worm trail on the inside of the helmet and came out the other side.
Oh, thank
And we
God.
could see that in the Kevlar. And yeah, that was a miracle. There's no other way to describe it. It was just a miracle. And but it profoundly affected me that, I think we get to a point where we think we're pretty good and maybe believe our own accolades more than we should sometimes.
Yeah.
And when you almost kill somebody, and that was God maybe trying to humble me a little bit, saying, "Hey, that's a warning. The next one may not be as fortunate. So start maybe paying a little more attention to what you're doing." And it was powerful. It really was, and it kind of affected the way I did things from that point on, for sure.
Did that, affect the team?
It did. Trust and connections got to be a big thing in any
Yeah.
tactical unit.
Yeah.
We had to remove a couple people because in
Hmm.
the ensuing investigation, we found out that 2 people that were on perimeter positions that were not supposed to engaged as
Mm.
the QRT moved up, and yeah, it was a funky time. And I think it was like the perfect storm. There was some poor leadership on the team at the time. There was this had occurred, so it was definitely a reset. To the team's credit, we got through it, and I think Tucson Police SWAT team has always been a good team. I think right
Yeah.
now they're one of the best teams in the nation. They're very, very, very much forward moving and progressive in their tactics, and they do some amazing, amazing work. So, like anything, I think the only way we get wiser and learn things in life is from the times we fail. So that was one giant learning opportunity for us. That's for sure.
Yeah. How did you deal with that setback? I mean, to the younger generation that's listening to this, if you get a setback like that, how do you work through that?
You know what? So I'll follow it up with another story, and this is really the second part of this that where it made me realize the kind of person I really have to be. About a month after this, we had SWAT training, and we were doing a full problem with our hostage unit. And a full problem for your listeners is it's a scenario of like a hostage taking, and that's what we did. So it was training. It wasn't a live situation, but we were going through the motions and doing all the exercises and tactics like it was a real situation. And there too, I was a team leader. And as a team leader, you're making sure everybody else is doing their duties and responsibilities and covering their areas. And you're an operator, but you're not the hands-on guy, so to speak. And when it came time in the scenario to attack mode, I don't want to say attack mode, assault mode, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, we engaged the hostage takers who were role players. And there was a target that came up that nobody was addressing that I immediately did not give one of my operators the opportunity to do his duty. I just kind of pushed him aside and went to engage the target. And when I did, my round hit him in the top of his helmet. And now this was not a live fire. Well, we were using simunitions and we
Sims.
had our protective gear on. So as far as danger, fortunately, we had all that, and there was no injury or anything like that. But this happened a month after we just shot one of our members in the head.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And you would think I would, after the first incident, I would be humble and like, okay, I really screwed up here. But that's not what I did. I immediately, that inner critic, that voice saying, man, they're going to know that you have no business here and you better just defend this to the end. Putting all the blame on the operator, saying, dude, you got my line of fire. That's on you. And I didn't do anything wrong here. And basically choosing to be a victim.
Mm.
And even as the words were coming out of my mouth, Jay, I knew, I'm like, dude, stop. You're that light saying you're screwing up here. That guilt
Yeah.
light was going crazy. And
Yeah.
we have our debrief, and I didn't let up. I took no responsibility, and I put it on the other person. And I felt like I could feel that guilt turning into shame inside
Mm.
me. Like poison,
Yeah.
And I got home that night, didn't sleep. I really thought about leaving the team. And ironically, it was the same operator that got shot in the head on the previous incident came and talked to me the next day when I was in the office, where I literally was contemplating resigning from the team, and had enough care and grace to tell me, look, you screwed up, but we like you, you got to fix this, but you don't need to leave the team. We value you as a teammate. And so that was reassuring to hear, but I still had about a week till I could address the team and fix things. And in that week, that shame just sat there the whole time. When I
Mm.
see the guys on the team, I couldn't look them in the eye, things like that. And I finally got the opportunity to admit that I was wrong, ask for them to forgive me for not taking responsibility
Yeah.
when I should. And I made the promise to myself right then and there, because I did some soul searching that week. And I realized that the only times in my life that I ever have had to deal with shame, I think guilt, like we talk about at Boulder Crest, guilt's something that is an early warning. It's something that just lets you know that you did something wrong, you need to fix it. Shame is when you start to think that you're what's wrong. And
Mm.
that's how I was feeling. And I finally recognized that, look, the only times I've ever really felt shame is the times in my life where I knew what the right thing to do was, and I did the opposite.
Right.
And so I made a promise to myself, or a commitment to myself, that from that point on, whatever pain may come from it, you do the right thing.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, that's the way I've led my life since then. And it's actually been like a weight's lifted, because no matter how bad we're all going to screw up. To think that you're going to go through life, but when you try to avoid taking responsibility for your screw ups, that's being a victim. And
Right.
that's feeding that victim mentality. And you can't do that. That was the second half of that really fundamentally changed me to say, moving forward, just going to take responsibility. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great story. What did forgiveness come right away, or on both sides? Was that a process for both of you, or was it immediate? How did you work through that?
I think forgiveness probably came quick. Trust, a little bit different. You definitely have to, because you were on SWAT both with the FBI and with Tucson. Yeah, you're trusting people with your life more so than you do in a regular role as a law enforcement officer. You want to make sure that that person, like, trust but verify. And I think that's that
Yeah.
period I went through. Is, yeah, let's just give it a little time. And I was good with that. I knew that, hey man, if the tables were turned, I'd be the same way. I'd be a little hesitant. I'd want to, talk is cheap. Let's
Yeah.
see some follow through.
Yeah.
And but they gave me the grace. They didn't, it's enough to say, you've earned the right to be given another opportunity. And fortunately, I was able to recover and become another trusted, valued member of the team. And I was able to leave SWAT the way I wanted to leave SWAT, and
Yeah.
quitting because you don't want to. I was when I was thinking about quitting there, that was such a cowardly thing to do. When I look
Mm,
back at it, it's like, dude, just, you screwed up. Get out of the cycle. Okay, you're already deep into it, but you don't have to keep going deeper.
stop.
Get out of this. I guess so. So it was a good. It actually turned out to be a good point in my career, because I was probably just a little bit more than right around about 18 years on the department at that point.
Okay.
So it was a good shift to the rest of my career and my life. Do the right thing, man.
Yeah.
You're never gonna go wrong by doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that story. I wish we could all learn and do that way, because you get into SWAT, you do those kind of things, and you can find yourself not being humble, and you're around a bunch of dudes, and you're with a brotherhood, and it takes things like that to humble us sometimes. And I'm glad you came through,
Yeah.
on the other side of that. How long did you stay on SWAT after all that? Did you stay on for a little bit longer and then move on, or?
Probably about 3 more years. I shifted probably within the year after that. I moved to another assignment that took over Homeland Security, that intelligence position. And that became a lot more time required, because we didn't have a lot of resources in that, but we did have a lot of responsibilities at the time. We're still
Yeah.
not super far from 9/11, and agents, intelligence to law enforcement was kind of a new thing. And it was still in that stage. So as time went on, I just could not make training as often as I wanted to. I kind of shifted into more of the administrative SWAT sergeant on call outs and things like that, providing information to the guys on calls. And eventually I just said, it's time to go.
It's time.
There's young people out there that could take my spot, standing in somebody's way. I've had a great time. And then those call outs at 3 a.m. also was a little bit of a
Oh,
factor too.
yeah.
They get a little old after a while. But
Was it hard at first? Did you feel like you were missing a part of the brotherhood?
not really. I think that was the other sign of knowing that it was time. You always hear, like, they went out on a really cool call, and you're like, "Ah, that would have been cool." But I was at that point where I realized, as cool as that was, man, they had to sit out there in the cold weather for like 8 hours.
Yeah, no
Before,
thanks.
so it's like, I've had plenty of cool calls. So it's cool to hear the stories, and I'm proud of them. But I'm glad. I'm a realist, fortunately, that I understand. Even when I retired, granted, it's the end of a relationship. So I think a lot of
Yeah.
people in the military and the first responder community, when they leave, you're ending a relationship, and
Yeah.
there's a grieving process.
Oh, yeah.
So I definitely was able to get through that quickly, knowing that, look, you did your time, and to every time there's a season, and it's just time to move on, because you've got young people you're not leaving anybody hanging. There's plenty of
Yeah.
young, qualified people that can take your spot. And that's kind of what I learned more so with working with Boulder Crest is, our purpose and our role are two different things. And I think that's where we get confused. We think, my role is my purpose. No, hopefully your role is fulfilling your purpose. But when you take, and some people aren't sure what their purpose is, but it took me a while to realize, look, your purpose is you want to make the world a better place. And as a police officer, you were able to do that for 28, 29 years. Now go find someplace else to work
That's
to
right.
fulfill your purpose to make the world a better place. And
Right.
that's essentially what I was able to do. So it wasn't that hard of a transition.
Yeah, I'm after many interviews now, I'm seeing that a lot of guys are and gals are, they're wondering what it's going to be like to leave, and then they leave, and it's the same thing that you're talking about. You got to find some purpose, and you got to find it's what I did, it's not who I am should be the goal. I was
Right.
a law enforcement officer, but that's not who I am. I have gifts and I have talents, and I can go find other places to use those. But before we get into Boulder, and we'll just move on to when you started the wellness program for time's sake. How did that come about, and how did you get involved in that
Yeah, good.
for other
So
department?
yeah. So I was at the academy. A couple things were happening. Our department was a little bit of a funk. The nation was going through COVID or wrapping up COVID, first of all. And then you
Yeah.
had what happened in Ferguson and the outpouring of this more negative attitude towards law enforcement. So that was already affecting not just Tucson Police Department, our profession nationwide. We had a chief that wasn't the most popular chief at the time, and that wasn't helping things. And then we also had, within about a 60-day period, we had two active members of our department take their own lives. And we hadn't had a member take their own life, I think, in 18 years before that.
Mm.
And then right after that, a very popular retired member took their life. So it was there was definitely a funk in it, and you could feel it. So change of chiefs. Chad Kazmaier, who's the chief of Tucson
Yes.
Police today,
Yep.
he came in as chief. He had an approach that was a little different than most chiefs. I think I worked for 5 chiefs during my career with Tucson, and I knew all of them, and they all were concerned about the morale of their people and everything. But they tended to put stuff like, "What does the city council think of me?
Mm.
What are our complaints look like?"
Yeah.
Those kind of things ahead of maybe what the morale of their people should be. And I don't know that for sure, but it just, the way they looked at things, that's the way it seemed to me. Dad came in and kind of flipped that. And he says, you know what? I'm going to put all my efforts into the well-being of my people.
Yeah.
And his belief is, if my people are well and in a good spot, then I don't have to worry about any of that other stuff.
Yeah.
And so he came in and he said, I want to start a wellness division. And I'm glad Chad likes me. He reached out to me and asked me if I would be part of that. And I was humbled. And so we started the first wellness division for Tucson Police Department. You may or may not remember, but we've always had a pretty good mental health support side of
Yeah.
the house.
Mhm.
A little more progressive than most agencies, but that's more of the reactive and they do proactive stuff, absolute proactive stuff. But we wanted to try to start doing things, because up to that point, when we thought about employee wellness, we were thinking more physical stuff, like what's their physical fitness level, things
Sure.
like that. Let's work on the brain health and
Yeah.
make sure that they're also in a good space mentally. So as we started this, we had a member of our department that had gone through one of Boulder Crest's program called Warrior Path, and that I'm going to give you well, I'll get to that in a minute when we talk more about Boulder Crest. But he came back and said, hey, they've got this program called Struggle Well that they're looking to pilot. And what it's designed to do is teach first responders that, one, it's okay to talk about the things you struggle with. And the other side of that is really learn about this concept called post-traumatic growth. Everybody
Yeah.
has heard about post-traumatic stress or stress disorder. There's another option, and that's actually growing from the traumas and things that we've experienced in life. So they had this class, Struggle Well, which is a 40-hour class that we started at the Tucson Police Department in 2021. We put the first class through. And initially we were like, well, we'll have our sergeants and our FTOs go through it. And by the second class, everybody that attended was like, we want everybody on the department to go through. We want our chiefs. We want our brand new people. So from that point on, we started sending everybody, and it was a really cool, diverse group. And it was one thing that the chief said is, he goes, I don't want to force anybody to go. I want to make it voluntary. But that being said, I think I think they've had less than my experience for the next 2 years putting it together, I had less than 10 people in the whole department tell me I'm not interested in going. So it
Wow.
was really cool. Everybody went on their own and enjoyed it. And there's been a great success with it. The University of Chicago did a case study on Tucson Police with the benefits of the Struggle Well program. And it was amazing, the numbers and the changes that they saw.
Yeah.
in our agency. So it made a good shift. It brought back that family, that trust and connection feel. And now I'll shift a little bit over to Boulder Crest, and the the point of the diversity of the class is one, to recognize that everybody struggles. When we were
Right.
young new officers, if you saw a chief or a commander or something, you're like, they got nothing to worry about. They don't have any struggles. When you have these people sitting in the room talking about, as chief or an assistant chief or a 25-year member of the department, I have struggles. I may have a wife who's going through cancer treatment. I may have a special needs child. And people are like, wow, I never knew that. And you see each other as human beings. You don't
Yeah.
see each other as just, hey, that's the chief or that's, and it really brings that family connection back.
So
So
some
it
vulnerability for sure.
and that's the true definition of trust, I think, is if you have trust with somebody, that means you know you can be vulnerable with them.
Yeah.
And that's why it's real important to establish that trust and connection both in the classes. So we did that for the next 2 years. We did a lot of stuff. We really reinvigorated the family day picnic for the department. We started offering meals to our officers that work the off the midnight and swing shifts, because there are not a lot of great healthy food options. So we got people to donate food. We revamped, we had a system, early intervention system, which was set up through internal affairs to look at people that were getting either complaints or use of sick leave or things like that.
Yeah.
We recognize that, hey, that's going to seem punitive if we approach it this way. We want to try to check on the wellness of our people, so we moved it over to wellness. Completely change. It's not at all an interdiction or intervention. It's all about just following up with people to see if there's anything we can do for them, because we noticed a couple things about their where they're at in life, and be there as a resource and show them that we value you as an employee and we want to do everything we can to help you if you're going through
Yeah.
some tough time. And it's just continuing to grow and move on from there. So some stuff was practical, like, hey, people wanted stand-up desks, we got them stand-up desks. We have a sauna. We put a CrossFit gym in. So we try to have an all-over approach, but it was kind of nice that whatever people suggested, we at least entertained it, and if we could afford to do it, we'd do it.
Yeah. So let me just go over a couple stats and then I want to get into you retiring, because I know a lot of people that listen to this, they're concerned about retiring and what that means. But then I definitely want to touch on your new adventure with Boulder Crest, this program. And so just real quick, I just pulled these up. And this was alarming to me. I hadn't been to one of these pages in a while, but it really it touched me. Killed on the line of duty in 2025, 73 people already,
Wow.
73 sworn officers. And I remember when we went through the academy, I think it was at 50 maybe or less. I think that was
Yeah.
the numbers. The suicide rate, the average is 184 from 2016 to 2022. 184 officers average have killed themselves every year since 2016 to 2022. And then the assaults on officers is about 56,034 assaults on officers while performing their duties just in 2019. And if we're about 700, little over 750,000 officers in the country, those are pretty profound numbers
They
that
are.
it seems like it's probably one of the most difficult jobs to do nowadays.
It is, and it's also the most necessary. Like I
Yeah.
talk about it, we won't have the society we have, the community we have, the rights we have if you don't have proper law enforcement out there.
Yeah.
You just won't. You absolutely
It'll be
won't.
chaos.
I
Absolutely.
think there was a city in Canada, maybe it was Toronto, but in 1973, please double check this because I'm going off of memory here, but their police department went on strike for like 18 hours. And the amount of crime that occurred in that 18 hours was incredible. And it just shows that. So to those members of law enforcement doing your job, no matter how hard it may be, you are the calm in the storm. You are bringing some stability to the chaos of the world.
Yes.
What you do is super, super noble, super, super important. And the rest of our country couldn't live their lives without you doing that job. But it's harder now. Yeah, absolutely. Because of a few things. I think the respect in general. My wife, she retired from the Air Force and teaches in high school. And the things that high school kids tell teachers today,
Mm.
I would never in a million years think of. So there's a general lack of respect in a lot of
Yeah.
communities. I don't think we have the best role models in our society, but that's on us. I really think, and as a law enforcement officer, we're in the best position to be that example. Go
Yes.
back to, I love Gandhi's quote, be the change you want to see in the world. And the way we treat people, if we're well and we can do this and show people how somebody who is well treats other people, it's going to resonate.
Yes.
It's just like when you're a new officer and you see that veteran that does things really good and kind of like seems to really always know how to talk to people and get them to confess to things and catch. You want to learn as much as you can from that person. And it's the
Yeah.
same if you're demonstrating that I am doing this job, I am able to manage the stress and everything that comes with it, and I'm keeping myself well about it. You're going to resonate with people around you.
Yeah.
So absolutely what happens is we have to recognize that focus on what we have control over. And often we tend to we think and concentrate on a lot of the stuff that we have no control over, and really to what end? It's not really worth our time. I don't know if you're familiar with the Stockdale paradox, but Admiral James Stockdale,
Yes.
POW in Hanoi
Yeah.
Hilton, he said two things that were profound in when he was interviewed is one, he would tell his troops that as difficult as this was going to be the defining moment of your life.
Mm.
One that you probably would not change if you had the chance to, because it's going to make you a much better person. And the other thing he was asked, well, who struggled in the Hanoi Hilton? He said it was the optimists. And when they asked him, they're like, well, you sounded optimistic. He's like, I wasn't optimistic. He goes, the optimists were the ones that would say, hey, we're going to be out of here by Christmas. And then Christmas
Mm.
would come. And the optimists were the ones that tried to put their hopes on things that they had no control over. So the first steps to really kind of focusing on wellness is recognizing that can only focus on what I have control over. And I
Yeah.
really have to make peace with the stuff that I don't. And as much as you may like being a police officer, the city you work for, the municipality, none of them promised you that we're going to make your life happy. All any of us were promised is, hey, if you show up and do your job every 2 weeks, you're getting a paycheck.
That's
And
right.
that is it. It's got to be from in here.
Yeah.
The other thing is, as human beings, we're naturally negative. 80% of our thoughts are negative. It's our default. So no matter what happens, we automatically start thinking of all the negative. You got to force yourself to make that shift. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily easy. But the biggest thing is we carry a lot. Struggle is the most normal human condition. It's universal. But when we're struggling, we get this idea because we have a self-critic in our head that like, no one's going to understand what I'm going through and I'm going to isolate. I'm not going to tell anybody.
Yeah.
And now that's front and center on everything you do. And it's going to affect the way you do things. So
Yeah.
if we want, this is a long way for me to get back to, if we want our society, the community that we police to be a better community, then we have to be that example by being the best versions of ourselves going out
Yeah.
there.
Amen.
And it really is. As much as we get assaulted and we get people trying to kill us, you got to lead with that professionalism, and you have to do what you have to do to bring peace to a situation. But that's
Yeah.
all you need to do. And 29 years here, man, we both know it. It's not easy at all. So that we're human beings. We get emotional. We definitely get frustrated. And that's normal. That's okay. That's that 80%. And when it's that self-realization that that's the way I'm leaning, that I wanna start going towards that 20%.
Yeah.
And if you go through a struggle well class or for one of our programs, we always bring up that story of the two wolves, the good wolf and the bad wolf. And we got to try to feed that good wolf as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great wisdom. And to those who are listening who are thinking about getting into law enforcement, if you're thinking about it, do it. You should do it.
Oh, yeah.
Don't look at these numbers. They're numbers, they're statistics. But any of this stuff could happen to you just driving down the freeway. Don't miss out on a career of service worrying about things like this. So I agree with you. There's things we can't control. That's universally true. So, all right. So you came up to getting retirement. How did that look for you? Were you ready? Did you know? Did you have opportunities that came up? Like, how did you know after 29 years it was time?
I was kind of ready. Yep. I had a good mentor, someone you knew that told me early on in my career, he's like, you'll know when it's time. And at that time, I was loving everything. I kind of knew to SWAT, everything. I was like, I'm going to be here 45 years, man. I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
And then probably about year 21, 22, I just don't know exactly, but I woke up one day and I go, totally get what he meant. Love the job. I still love the job. I don't look back on my career and have nothing but accolades for it. I really enjoyed being a police officer every day of my life, but I was ready. It's kind of like, it's just more internal, like you're ready for a change.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I still had time to go. And so I think I had time to work through that transition and maybe find out what I want to do next. And that's where one of the things I did in wellness that was eye-opening for me is I worked with all the retirees or people that are getting ready to retire. I was putting together retirement programs and also interacting with our retirees. And there'll be guys that we have a drop system where people enter the drop that means they have a 5-year countdown before they have to leave. And they would get down to like the last 6 months and be like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, well, if you had 5 years to think about it, you know?
Wow.
So
Yeah,
it's kind of
come
like,
on.
but Jack Harris, a retired captain who does some presenting for us at the Department for Retirees, he said, look, cops are excellent at financially preparing for retirement. They suck at mentally preparing for retirement,
Mm,
you know, and because again, we get stuck in that role. That being said, though, on the flip side, when I work with the retirees, I would say that it's in the high 90 percentile of retirees that are living their best life. They're enjoying it. They're doing well. A lot of them will say, I don't know where I had the time to work, you know, because they're so active with everything
yeah,
else. There is a life out there for sure. But understand anytime there's a change in your life, especially when you retire, like I said earlier, it's a relationship ending. So there's going
yeah,
to be a grieving process. Don't fight it. You know, recognize it. It's natural. Really, what I would do, and this is what, fortunately, I had done this before I retired quite a ways, so I kind of knew this, but really start thinking now, what is my true purpose in life? Why am I on this planet? Why is God let me get out of bed every day? Once you can answer that, then you can start to see, okay, I've been able to fulfill my purpose this way. Now, what other opportunities are out there to fulfill my purpose? You don't have to
yeah,
look far. You do
yeah.
not have to look far. There's plenty of stuff. So start doing that. And then back to your statistic about the suicide and even going through this retirement or separation period, it's okay to talk about what you're struggling with because that's the beauty of the class, the struggle well class, is when you have 25 of your colleagues in there and you start to develop that trust and connection and people talk about what they're struggling with. One, it's never usually about work. The majority of the stuff that people talk about, what they're struggling with in our profession is personal life stuff.
Yeah.
It's it the uniqueness of it is there's never been a class where there's ever been one person that says, I got nothing I'm struggling with. Every single one of us at any point in our life has something going on that we're struggling with.
Yeah.
It's the most normal of human conditions. And human beings for millennia talked about it. You know, when we were more of a tribal village type of people, when we had to rely on each other to survive every day, we talked about things. Now that we're in a society that between technology and the advancements, we don't need to anybody else to survive. You could go home today, never see another soul. You can call your groceries in, order food. You
Yeah.
don't have to interact
It's
with
a
people. So
terrible life.
it is, and it's forced us to, or it's given us the opportunity, if we want to, isolate as much as we want.
Sure.
That's not as human beings. We're not designed to isolate,
Yeah.
and it's in our DNA to be connected to one another.
Yeah, I agree.
So talk about the things that are bothering you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's okay because what you'll find is whoever you're talking to, and obviously it's going to be somebody that you probably trust. You need to
Sure.
probably talk to somebody you trust, but they're going to tell you that they're struggling too. That may surprise you, but there's none of us that aren't struggling. And if
That's
we can
right.
be there for each other, that's how we learn. When we talk to each other, that's how we learn how we can grow from this. Use this
Yeah.
as an opportunity for grow instead of be debilitated by it. So,
So
yeah,
you got an opportunity with Boulder Crest?
I did. So spent the last 2 years in wellness and doing the Struggle Well program at Boulder Crest, it had gone, Tucson was a pilot and Miami-Dade was a pilot
Mm,
program for Boulder Crest. And in the short 2 years that they had been doing the classes with us, it had started to grow in Arizona. It was up in Mesa and a couple of the Valley agencies. It's expanded into Southern Arizona. And they needed a director for Arizona, somebody that can kind of run the program in Arizona. And I was ready to retire. They asked and I accepted, and it's been great. And in that period of time, it's gone from just like Arizona and Florida to we're in 26 states across the
wow.
country.
Yeah, that's amazing.
My role in Arizona has now expanded to the entire west coast of the United States, and it's
Wow.
great. It's been a blessing. But it's because agencies are really, there's never been anything like this for organizations, and it's all built around this concept, post-traumatic growth. The Reader's Digest version, Boulder Crest was founded by a gentleman named Ken Falk. You'd love it. Ken is a retired EOD tech from the
Yeah.
Navy.
All right.
He started a company called AT Solutions. You might be
Yeah. Oh,
familiar.
yeah. I know who that is.
Yeah, so he was successful in the defense contractor world,
Mm,
and then he got philanthropic. And being a retired veteran, as he lived in Northern Virginia, he would visit the wounded warriors at Walter Reed, and with his time and seeing those guys going through recovery, him and his wife Julia wanted to do something. They started Boulder Crest Foundation donated a portion of their land in Northern Virginia and built some cabins on it as an area for these folks and their families to rest and recover. And he also wanted to give them an opportunity to maybe learn something or give them something they could use in life that would be constructive. And one thing that Ken found when he was working with these veterans is what was available for veterans that had catastrophic physical injuries had a pretty good road to recovery with prosthetics, with therapies, things like
Yeah.
that. Veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress or stress disorder, it was a little less positive. What they found is that were getting people back to about 30 to 40% of where they were at before what they
Mm.
experienced. And it kind of put Ken on a mission. He spoke with folks at Harvard, at Berkeley, at the University of Chicago, looking for a better way, and pretty much was told, this is what the protocol is. We know it's not the best, but this is what we do. And he didn't sit well. He wanted to find something better, and he came across two docs, Dr. Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, who are two psychologists in North Carolina. They were working at UC Charlotte, and they were working on this concept of post-traumatic growth. And how they got started is they were just two psychologists, college professors that decided they wanted to figure out where wisdom came from.
Mm.
And in that journey, they discovered that wisdom is just learning to grow from the traumas and the hardships that we have gone through in life. It's struggle is what produces us our wisdom. And they found this out by talking to adults that suffered catastrophic injuries. They did a deep dive with the POW, they were POWs, but the North Vietnamese treated them like war criminals, but the POWs from the Hanoi Hilton, and also the people that survived the Holocaust. And in those situations, as traumatic as they were, many of them, in fact, when you talk about the POWs from the Hanoi Hilton, all but about 4% of them survived that with no PTSD and actually went on to thrive in life, going through that most traumatic. Through their research, they developed this idea of post-traumatic growth. Ken asked Dr. Tedeschi, could you teach this to people? He's like, well, give it a try. And so we started our first program, Warrior Path. And Warrior Path is a residential program for combat veterans is what it started. They would come to one of our ranches, spend a week there going through this post-traumatic growth curriculum, along with some stuff like equine therapy, walking the labyrinth, and other things. The unique thing about our programs, they're all peer-to-peer. They're led either by veterans or first responders.
Yeah.
It's definitely, we do have the Post-Traumatic Growth Institute. Dr. Tedeschi leads that, but it's all peer-to-peer training. So at Warrior Path was initially just for combat veterans. After the Las Vegas Harvest concert terrorist attack, our board saw that first responders see just as much trauma as combat veterans do, and they opened up Warrior Path to first responders. After a couple groups of first responders went through, they had feedback like, hey, this was great, but it'd be really cool if you could develop a program that we could deliver to these people at agencies early in their career so they have a roadmap to navigate the traumas and things they experience.
Yeah.
So that's where we developed the Struggle Well program. Essentially, that's what Struggle Well is. It's a 5-day class that Boulder Crest partners with agencies to deliver at agencies and teaches the members of their agency that the times that we go through challenges, through struggles, are opportunities for us to grow. Never do we say trauma is a good thing. It's just the reality is we're all going to experience trauma at points in our life. And as a responder, you're going to experience trauma about 10 to 15 times more than the average human being will. So use some of these practices and methods and concepts so that you can navigate it and grow from it. And it's time proven. The term post-traumatic growth is new.
Yeah. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. People have been growing from trauma since the beginning of time. They really have. It's all, all Greek philosophy, proverbs and lessons in the Bible are all surrounded by wisdom comes from suffering. You suffer, and that's how we get wiser.
Yeah.
So, and we've been really successful. So we've been doing this now. I think Struggle Well is in the 5th or 6th year now. We've served over 135,000 veterans and first responders, and we're just scratching the surface, brother.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I was going to say never heard of post-traumatic growth. I thought that was very interesting. And can you talk a little bit about the 5 phases? If a law enforcement officer who's retired, can they participate in programs like this?
Yeah, good question. So our programs, we still have our flagship program, which is Warrior Path, and any retired or active duty veteran, military member, first responder is eligible to attend that program. You would go to our website, bouldercrest.org, and just apply for the program. There's some steps involved. The Warrior Path is an intensive program. Like I said, that's the one where you actually go to one of our facilities, and we've got We do it about 8 times a month because we have 3 ranches that Boulder Crest has,
Wow.
plus we had five other partner
Yeah.
organizations, Travis Mills, Sheepdog, Southern Ground, a few others that host the class. And that's for 8 to 10 people at a time, and it's intensive. So if you think of that as more of an intervention type program, you don't have to be in crisis to go, but it's more for people that are stuck in their struggle a little bit.
Sure. Okay.
Struggle well is designed to be more of a preparation class for. It doesn't mean that it will help you if you are stuck in your struggle, but it's also for people that have the everyday struggles, if there is such a thing, but are doing okay, but more skills and techniques and practices that they can learn to grow from the traumas that they're experiencing. And what Tedeschi and Calhoun learned in this when they talked to all these people is there's 5 areas for growth that they came across. I'm sorry, I'm cheating here a little, just looking at my notes, but the first is new possibilities. After going through these traumatic events, practicing growth, you can see that there are possibilities that may not have existed before you have gone through this that now exist, and it gives you opportunities there. The other is deeper relationships. And we talked a little bit earlier about how we are wired as human beings to be in connection with people.
Sure.
But when you start to talk to people and learn that they're sharing very similar struggles, first responders, military members share very similar struggles, it deepens that connection. There's the study that Harvard did back and it's still going on today. They started a study in the 30s looking at what leads to a happy and productive life. And what they found is they followed some college students at Harvard from the 30s, and they're still following their kids, their grandkids, their great grandkids. The secret is that the secret to a happy life is connection to other people. That's
Mm.
really what they found. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of data that shows that. Then there's personal strength. That whole I survived this, I can survive anything. That goes back to the Hanoi Hilton. Those people realized this was the defining moment of my life. As hard as this made me the best version of myself, and I'm going to carry that on to life. The next is an appreciation for life, that gratitude that every day is a blessing, and
Yeah.
realizing that life is very special,
That's right.
and to take advantage of that. And as much as the hardships are going to be there, there's a lot of blessings too. And then the last area of growth that was reported is that spiritual or existential change.
Yes.
If people are religious, they tend to really examine their faith. A lot of people that are religious tend to, I'm faithful, but God or whatever I worship isn't the number one thing in my life. And they make that shift after that. But the other side is if you're not so religious, that existential change, they just come to realize that there's something bigger in this world besides myself,
Yeah.
And I think that was when I told you my story in SWAT, where I had the incident at training and shot the guy in the back of the head. That became an existential change for me, realizing that, okay, you're not as special as you think you are. And that's okay, so start making those changes in life. So those are that's what Dr. Tedeschi and Calhoun found when they interviewed all these people. These were the 5 areas they reported growth through that. The roadmap there, it's all around trust and connection. We have to have that trust and connection. And then in the class, we start with education, learning that we can only control what we control, but the
Yeah.
choice is ours. And we can choose to either be a victim or we can choose to take the warrior path. You can either ask, why me, or just why, or why not me,
Yeah.
or not, and kind of go from there. And then you get into regulation, and that's huge for our profession. It's instead of reacting to life, learning how to respond to life. Victor Frankl was a
Yes.
Holocaust survivor and a
Yep.
psychiatrist. I wrote a great book, Man's Search for Meaning, and in
That's
that he
right.
talks about that space between the time an action happens and our response to it. There's a space, and it's what we decide to do in that space that makes all the difference in the world. So that's what we focus on regulation, is learning how to utilize that space so that we can respond to life rather than react like it. We dive deep because one of the areas we don't realize is the way we've been trained as first responders or military members affects that. It makes us really good at work, but in other environments, it causes some struggle. Like when we try to run our house, like we do the police station or the firehouse, it can
Right.
cause a little struggle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we point those things out. Then we talk about disclosure, this whole concept of talking about the things we struggle with, the things that we carry. We use the metaphor of carrying a rucksack. And every time you go through a trauma, you're putting another rock in your rucksack. Doesn't matter how resilient you are, eventually that's going to get too heavy to carry.
That's right.
You're going to have to take a knee. So how do you unload that? And we talk about that in disclosure. That's the first 3 heavy parts of the roadmap that lead to the more uplifting turn the corner. And so then the 4th phase is story. learning to take the pen back and write your own story. If you think of your life as a book, what do you want the last chapter of your story to be? And are you congruent with that? Are you on track to fulfill that? And so we really want to learn about we're on a hero's journey. Essentially each and every one of us are on a hero's journey, and we're trying to write our story to where we're the victor that we want to be at the end of it. And then the final part of the path is service, which we're in professions of service. It's
That's right.
really diving deep into the best way to make this world a better place. If you've gained all this wisdom from going through all these trials and tribulations through your life, but you keep it to yourself, you're not serving anybody. If
Yeah.
you take that wisdom and share it with others so that they can grow and learn and maybe avoid some of the pitfalls or some of the hardships that you had to go through, that's what we are on this planet to do. That's
Yeah.
how we serve each other, make each other better people. And we cover that in the Struggle Well program. It's been very impactful. It's really a shifting of perspective on a lot of things for people.
Yeah.
I hear this a lot. I said it myself when I went through. I'm like, man, why didn't I have this 25, 30 years ago when I started? But
Right.
better late than never. Better
Yeah.
late than never.
Yeah.
So any agents, if anybody's interested, Jay's got my contact information, or just go to the Boulder Crest website, bouldercrest.org, and you can just submit some interest or requests about this stuff, whether it's Struggle Well, whether it's Warrior Path. We have programs in a lot of states, and if we're not in the state you're in, we've got ways for you to attend a program. So
Okay.
if any of this interests you, please reach out to either. You can even get a hold of me through the website. So reach
Yeah.
out on the website.
I'll definitely put this down below when we put this on YouTube. But well, I know we're hitting a hard time here, but I always end the interview with the final question. And I didn't give this to you, but what is one piece of life advice that has helped you win at life?
I think it's trying to live in the moment. Love Marcus Aurelius. And probably my favorite Marcus Aurelius quote is one where he says, whether we're young or whether we're old, the only thing we have and the only thing we have to lose is this moment in time. So I really try to be in this moment of time. If you think about it, Jay, we're never going to have another October 17th, 2025 again in our lives.
Ever.
So what are we doing with it? Are we making the most of it? Are we trying to make this day worth living? And so I really try to do that. It's not hard. I used to think like, well, how do you change the world? Hold a door open for somebody. Tell somebody hi. Smile. Kindness is a superpower, man.
That sure is.
Kindness is a superpower. So go out there, be kind today. If you're feeling bad about something or you're hurting, if you go out and give kindness to somebody else, it will cure that pain you're carrying. I guarantee it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is I try to. Then I fall short.
Yeah, we
The
all
human
do.
pops up. So give yourself some grace there, but just try to do better next time and keep moving forward. So,
Well, that's great advice, Robert. I'm so grateful that we got to serve together. I wish it was a little bit longer, but the time I had with you was great, and you had an amazing career. Thank you for serving the people of Tucson, and thank you for this interview. I really do appreciate it.
Brother, it's my pleasure. You've had a pretty amazing career in life too, and I've always been proud to see what you've done with your career. And I know that you're a good family man and a good man all around, a good child of God. So God bless you, brother.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
amen. Amen.
All right, man.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you.
Take care.